Sam Howell getting most or all of the first-team reps in Washington. They have not completely counted out Jacoby Brissett, but at least it looks like it's not so much a competition, but it is Howell's job to lose in Washington. Running back news, sit down. We got a lot of it. Mike Florio says that the Broncos and Chiefs are among the teams interested in Josh Jacobs if the Raiders rescind the franchise tag, which is not completely out of the question. I guess that would make him a free agent. It would save the Raiders $10 million.
That's his agent trying to get Jacobs paid.
Okay.
By floating that rumor out there.
Yeah. The Rams, this is just a lot of handcuff stuff maybe right now, just depth chart stuff. The Rams, according to ESPN, see Kyren Williams as their number 2 running back and perhaps a better pass blocker than Cam Akers.
Yeah, third down back type.
Damian Harris and Latavius Murray were competing for short yardage reps, but both of them in Buffalo have been behind James Cook, and Harris has been the second-team running back. I guess the question would be, is Harris or Latavius Murray going to take James Cook off the field in short yardage?
Yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes. That's expected.
But Cook has been a riser, so we'll get to him.
Also, yes.
Bears running back Deontay Foreman. Oh, this is the annual time of year where everyone's involved in the passing game, especially the ones that are never involved in the passing game. So Deontay Foreman, Nick Chubb, which maybe I buy a little bit more.
Brian Robinson
for sure. That was one that I wanted to bring up. Dave already did. These guys have been used more in the passing game, but I actually look back to 2019. And before, so that was the year that Kareem Hunt signed with the Browns, but he was suspended for the first 8 games. In the first 8 games of the season, Nick Chubb had 25 catches. So he was on pace for 52 or 53 catches, whatever it was over. I might have my math wrong. No, I think about 53 catches over 17 games. We did see that in 2019, which was a long time ago. Saints running back Eno Benjamin out for the season. By the way, the Saints are hosting Kareem Hunt today. So we'll see if anything happens there.
Good, another running back.
Yeah, exactly. Chase Edmonds could be Tampa Bay's third down back. So in the discussion about Rashad White, is that a concern that Chase Edmonds, that they like him and maybe he could be the third down back, Dave Richard?
We've seen Edmonds in that role before and lose it. So that doesn't really scare me off of Rashad White very much.
Last year was a terrible year for Chase Edmonds. Started with the Dolphins and we thought he could be good. I think he had 12 carries in week 1 for 25 yards, and then he lost his role, and then he got traded to the Broncos. It just was a bad year for Edmonds. Before that, he looked like a pretty good player in spurts, and I think he's only 27. And by the way, Baker Mayfield actually has a pretty good history of throwing to running back.
20%, yes.
Yeah, we saw it with Duke Johnson. We saw it with Nick Chubb, as I mentioned, and then Kareem Hunt last year with McCaffrey, for what that's worth. But how about you, Chris? Does I guess the role of Rashad White, he's really probably going to need to be on the field a lot to be great. So what about this Chase Edmonds potential third down role?
I mean, that's one of the things that I'm really trying to keep an eye on, and there just hasn't been a ton of reporting out of Tampa. I've seen a few reports that they view Rashad White as a clear 3-down back, which was why I've put him as a riser. But, if there's any ambiguity about his role, I don't really want very much of Rashad White because he feels like a pretty classic dead zone RB where I don't want to speak for everyone. I don't think he's a particularly good player. What we saw last season was pretty uninspiring. I thought he couldn't beat out a pretty dusted Leonard Fournette and certainly wasn't all that much better than him when he had his opportunities. So if there's any ambiguity about his role, especially as a pass catcher, because that's, I think, really what the appeal is, I'm not gonna have Rashad White as a top 12 or top 24 running back for sure.
Miami rookie running back Devon Achane is day-to-day with a leg injury. Keontae Ingram looks like the front runner to be James Conner's backup in Arizona.
Yay.
Chris Evans is a name to know. I think we all like Chase Brown potentially in Cincinnati, but it could be Chris Evans as Joe Mixon's backup. And right now in Indianapolis with Jonathan Taylor out, with Zach Moss out, Evan Hull and Deion Jackson have been splitting first-team reps. Tank Bigsby had a good day in camp the other day. He scored a couple of touchdowns in a red zone drill. And
hold up. Didn't the Colts sign Kenyon Drake?
They did sign Kenyon Drake. Yes.
Yeah. Like the answer to your question when you don't have anything good at running back is to sign Kenyon Drake. And that makes it all worse for fantasy. This will be a mess if they don't have Jonathan Taylor.
Tank Bigsby is whatever. But
he's a potential goal line stealer and handcuffed to Etienne. Dearness Johnson has also been in that role, though.
Yeah, but you cannot find a bad word about Travis Etienne right now.
No.
Seems to indicate that he is having a great camp and poised for a big year.
That's another rankings riser.
Fingers crossed on that one. Amir Abdullah and Zamir White have been splitting first-team reps for the Raiders. The Cardinals signed Marlon Mack, whatever. How about this, Chris? Kenneth Gainwell getting 2-minute drill work for the Eagles, and they're using so many running backs there. I don't know that we have any clarity right now about what to expect.
Yeah, I was looking back at some of the stuff I was writing this time last year, and I realized that a lot of the stuff we're seeing out of Eagles camp is exactly what they said last year. They were using 4 backs in the first team. They were cycling everyone through. Then when the season came, 4 backs got on the field,
right?
But it was all Miles Sanders in the running game. So that's one of the things in the preseason I really want to keep an eye on is how they use the rushing downs, I guess. If there's no clarity in the rushing role, then it's DeAndre Swift is the guy to use. But if Rashad Penny's the clear lead rusher, then I think it opens up some other avenues. But yeah, Gainwell is going to have a role. DeAndre Swift's not going to dominate every passing snap here. And that's a struggle when it's a team that hasn't thrown the ball to running backs very often in the past.
Love going after Penny if I go 0 RB in my builds because he can get me off to a good start. We can expect him to be healthy for, fingers crossed, the first month of the season. It's almost the same thing that we said last year about Penny. He can be a starter for you to begin the year. He's an RB2
and it worked
to begin
out
the year. Yeah,
for
it did.
4 weeks.
And what if he stays healthy for 2 months? You know, the fantasy gods will smile on us. It would be an amazing value. And we're talking round 8, round 9.
And he has dropped weight.
I don't know. I mean, on Friday, I talked about an ESPN report that DeAndre Swift, it was more of like a gut feeling that DeAndre Swift was starting to, look better and maybe bidding to be the guy. And my concern with Penny is, we're talking maybe 0 catches for Penny, maybe 1 per game. And if he doesn't score 60 yards and no touchdowns, like Jalen Hurts scores so many touchdowns near the end zone. You talk about touchdown dependent.
That's why he's not going ahead of Swift, and that's why he's not like a round 7 pick.
I know. I get that.
Right. But there's value in Penny.
Yeah. There's 1 cent. So,
but I will say, I think it's unlikely that they have multiple starting running backs for fantasy. Like that doesn't. There's ambiguous backfields where you can see, like Detroit. I can see both Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery being worth using. Philadelphia, I think it's either they've got 1 guy who's an RB2 or they've got 3 guys that are RB4s, and that there's not a lot of room in between that.
Right. Okay, last running back note is a big one here. So ESPN's Dan Graziano was at Dallas camp, and he basically scoffed at the notion that this is going to be a run-heavy team, and he has a quote from a Cowboys official. Look at our personnel. Do we look like we're built to be a run-first team? And then he went on to say, no, they don't. And he said, look, I expect Pollard to be the number 1 running back in Dallas, obviously. This is Graziano, not this Cowboys official. And I think Pollard will be a nice fantasy asset. I'm just not sure you should expect any more production from him this year than what he gave you last year just because Elliott is gone. The Cowboys still see Pollard as a player they have to be careful not to overwork if they're going to keep getting the best out of him. So I would expect them to use other backs in combination with him. The Cowboys are higher on second-year back Malik Davis than you might think, and I believe 5'6" rookie Deuce Vaughn will have a role as well. So does that analysis, if it holds true, does that take him out of the first round?
Not for me, because I don't entirely buy it all.
I also would say that he kind of, Graziano was also kind of saying that Pollard's going to have a role in the passing game. So
sure, which he did last year, and he did a good job with it. And there's 12 touchdowns missing from last year from Ezekiel Elliott not being on the team. 12 rushing touchdowns. Zeke had that role. Zeke's not there anymore, and I don't think Malik Davis is going to have that role. If you give Pollard 6 more touchdowns on what he did last year, and he scored a ton of touchdowns last year, you're talking about 18.6 PPR points per game.
Who?
Tony Pollard.
How many points per game?
18.6.
I thought you said 8.6. That's why I didn't.
No, 8.6 would not be good. That's not
bad.
A first rounder. But 18.6 is pretty close to what Derrick Henry gave you last year in PPR.
Yeah, I've got him as more like a early second rounder. I think he's my number 15 overall player. That's with like I'm only projecting like 1.5, 2 more targets per game and 3 carries per game more. So I'm not expecting him to, suddenly have a Josh Jacobs role or anything. I think among the top 12 running backs, Pollard is probably the lowest in projected rushing attempts for me. So there is definitely, I think, still room even on that projection for him to outperform expectations. But
and if he gets another 1.5 targets per game, I'm sorry to cut you off, Chris. I thought you were done.
No, you're good.
You're getting close to 5 targets per game. He averaged almost 3.5 last year. I'd love to see that. That would be amazing.
He'd be a monster.
He'd be a monster.
Wide receiver news. Sean McVay downplayed Cooper Kupp's injury. Hopefully this is nothing serious. Cortland Sutton having a good camp.
Yeah. Every time Russell Wilson needs a completion, he looks to Cortland Sutton. That's never burned anyone before. Let's get him in the top 12 wide receivers, baby. Let's do it.
That feels very perfect.
I had a very good season last year fading Cortland Sutton, and I'd be happy to do it again.
I'll take him around pick 100 or something like that.
Right, yeah, like where he's going, who cares? There's no downside to taking him.
Round 10.
Rashad Bateman could be back soon. Garrett Wilson should practice this week. TJ Hawkinson left practice. There's a thought that this is contract related, but he left with, I think, a trainer. I don't know. It's a bit of a vague situation now with TJ Hawkinson. Probably nothing to be concerned about. Unfortunately, Houston center Scott Quisenberry is out for the season with a torn ACL and MCL. So that's a significant injury, one of the first we've had.
They're going to have to start a rookie there.
Yeah, and they had one of the worst offensive lines in terms of creating in the run game. They were last, I believe, according to PFF, in yards before contact created.
True, but they are changing their run scheme, so I don't know if it means anything.
They added Shaq Mason as well. That's the Houston Texans. I won't give you the defensive injuries, or notes or whatever, except I will say that Carolina signed Justin Houston and Chicago signed Yannick Ngakoue, 2 pass rushers there for Carolina and for Chicago.